Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Time travel is a funny thing. Go back a couple of decades and you can drastically alter your present. Go back a century and you can change the course of the entire planet. Hop back and forth like a ping pong ball, you risk destroying the fabric of two universes. At least that's the case while I'm taking issue with JLA WildC.A.T.s, written by Grant Morrison, alongside art by WildC.A.T.s, Kevin Conrad, Ray Crissing, and Pat Garrahy. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads. The cover features both teams grouped together against a background of wreckage and some debris on fire in front of them. I've read this a few times over the years, and every time I look at the cover, Wonder Woman looks more and more cross-eyed. And yes, that's supposed to be Superman. Superman, man of ions, last son of Kremzik. This book was printed during a period in which Superman's powers and abilities were altered to be far beyond those of mortal electronic stores. He became electrically based, leaving his Clark Kent identity completely human and vulnerable. Yet another attempt to make Superman modern and hip for the time, or some such. And yet I don't find it quite as stupid as the New 52. We begin as Wally West narrates about his time as Kid Flash, when he was investigating reports of an unidentified object spotted around a farm. The ground suddenly eroded around him, making him wipe out, and he's faced with a stranger with a technologically advanced suit, pointing a weapon at him. Back when I was a kid, there was one rule you could always rely on. Gun equals bad guy. Unlike these days, when that means they're supposed to be the greatest heroes ever, even when they're terrible people and don't actually do anything. Kid starts vibrating the air molecules into an airstream targeting the foe's feet, trying to give him a hot foot. And it seems like a clever enough maneuver, but also a tad dubious in how they show it working. I don't think this is how air works. Anyway, the guy boasts about how his suit is from dozens of centuries in the future and can replicate the enhanced properties of aliens like Durlans, Martians, Daxamites, and so forth, and the young speedster's trick becomes less than effective. He formally introduces himself as Epoch, Lord of Time, and fires his weapon to do away with the hero, only for the projectiles to be diverted by the present-day Wally West, now the Flash, joined by the Justice League of America on a 2-page spread. To one side, the Leaguers chosen for this story are listed, and on the other are the image characters we won't see for several pages. It's okay, son. We'll deal with this now. No! You can't let young Wally see the 90s epic that is Electric Superman. People of that era simply aren't ready for that level of extreme! You risk causing more damage than Epoch, quite frankly. Epoch mentions that the League has already taken away his Chrono Cube, but his suit already downloaded its time-traveling capabilities, and demonstrates what he can do by channeling the era in Earth's distant future, when the dying sun turns red, to use its energy to destroy Superman! I didn't know what he was talking about. I couldn't see Superman anywhere. Not until I looked real hard. Well, first I breathed in some gasoline fumes, rubbed my eyes vigorously, and hit myself real hard with a mallet. Then he sorta started looking kinda Superman-ish. My head might hurt. The one upside to this current form, and yes, I'm surprised there was one myself, is that red solar energy no longer has an effect on Supes. Epoch vanishes into time, saying that he can attack them or their ancestors in the past. Before they give chase, Wally gives his bewildered teenage self some advice. Trust me on this, Wally. It's like kissing. Just one of those things that won't make sense until you're older. Oh, time travel's like kissing. I can't do it because I'm not attractive enough. It makes so much sense now. The League enter the Chrono Cube to go after Epoch, while Green Lantern remarks on his friend's past self. You had the best suit though, man. Lantern, No, seriously.
Don't say it.
You must have looked so cool.
Don't.
Whizzing by in your yellow costume.
This is why I stopped showing you my photo albums, Kyle.
The League narrowly prevents Epoch from causing havoc throughout time, AD and BC, such as his near murder of Kyle Rayner's prehistoric ancestor. At one point, the Flash gets in close, but because he's within the villain's shield, which slows time, he can't actually catch up to him. Their time hopping even takes them to 2016. If only we had the luxury of blaming the insanity of that electoral year on a power-mad, time-traveling supervillain. During a brief stop in 1944 within viewing distance of the Justice Society of America, Epoch explains that historical records of his time recorded his rule over the late 20th century Earth. From there, they warp back to 65 billion BC, where Superman detects a dark nova event that Epoch's suit begins feeding on and evolving him to a godlike state, or so he believes. Energy streaming backwards through time, anti-tachyon strip-mined by the gravity of the dark nova, absorbed through the warsuit's smart skin casing, feeding the armor's computer colonies. I must record this moment. This is the greatest moment of my life! Nerd! After fending off GL from time-displaced Owen battery power, Epoch flings the heroes into the future, but keeps their time drive in the Chrono Cube in 65 million BC, while he goes to get his Tyrant on. And that was the last he saw of the JLA ever again. Short book, kind of a downer ending. In 33 AD, plus 2 hours, the team exits their time machine, Flash grousing over the entire situation, Batman giving a verbal elbow drop on Green Lantern, doubting he can construct a new time drive from memory, and Superman is so dumbfounded by the Dark Nova, Wonder Woman has to repeat herself. She asserts that the time drive must still be around, since it was left in the past and they've just been flung ahead in time. They realize she has a point, given a device that withstands the stresses of time could still be intact, so Supes and Lantern start looking. For a guy that calls himself the Lord of Time, Epoch really didn't think this through, did he? Oh, don't take the time drive with you, just leave it somewhere in the past after sending your foes into the future. Because it's not like one eventually leads to the other, right? It's not long before they find the device underground, embedded in limestone near a river, though mentioning they've found several other items dropped by time travelers before this. As they retrieve the drive, a Roman soldier witnesses them. Superman apparently recognizing him, giving him a see-you-later wave, and takes off with Rayner. When the soldier tells his brothers-in-arms later, they don't take him seriously, just saying he should shut up and have a drink. Hail bloody Caesar! This is 33 AD, so Caesar won't really be bloody for 11 years or so. But something else about this page kind of confuses me. Hey, were British colloquialisms particularly common back in that time? Oh, that explains everything. They all focus their willpower on Kyle so he can use his ring to jumpstart the drive, which Rayner finds much more entertaining than bats, naturally, and it's enough to get them on their way. A series of panels show how weird it is for them, though I'm not sure why it should be if they've been doing it since before this story actually started. Why would using their little time box now be any different from before? So much so that Flash would warn them. And if things are different, how would he even know? Anyway, when this jump is finished, the controls say they're in the right place in time, but things look a lot more devastating than usual. Massive wreckage, violence, needless destruction. It could only be worse if we had pointless outlines on our costumes and really stupid new origins. On another 2-page spread, we're finally introduced to the other half of this crossover, consisting of Majestic, Void, Zealot, Maul, and Grifter. So maybe this is the New 52 universe. Anyway, they're on the lookout for a particular enemy, observing the chaos from high above. Void suggests the recent activation of normally dormant gen-active people, in other words, folks getting superpowers, could be traced to something from outside their universe causing disruptions in the quantum foam.
Quantum foam, of course, being what Sam Beckett produced in that lost episode of Quantum Leap when he contracted that bit of rabies.
After Grifter snarks about their situation, Majestic suggests they start taking action, using minimal force since they're trying to ease tensions with the supervillain community after a recent gang war.
Easing tensions with supervillains? Don't they kind of cause tension by being supervillains? This is political correctness gone too far, people!
Actually, this is probably just some long-standing detail that seems weird to me because I never read a WildC.A.T.s comic before. Zealot drops in on a cybernetic creature that confuses her, but realizes it's a cyborg after cleaving it in two, while it says Mama.
I'd rather not think too much on the implications of that.
The rest of the team joins in when more enemies arrive, Majestic deciding to renege on that order he gave just 2 seconds ago and forget minimum force as he eye blasts through someone's head. Grifter faces an enemy calling himself Freaky, who looks like a bunch of boils glued together as he leaps or floats towards him. He doesn't last, as it apparently takes only one shot for him to pop like a balloon, blood and entrails shooting out to the sound effect Spork?
I take offense to that comic. We sporks are a proud people and will not be denigrated like this. Granted, I think it's just me, and I think there's a guy on Tumblr that really doesn't like me. But anyway, still, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. Which, because I have no money, will probably be just me borrowing my dad's Perry Mason DVDs. But still, you're in trouble, pal.
Thanks. I already ate you. Yeah, right, and you probably didn't eat with a spork, you lousy... Anyway, Void notices a red streak nearby and follows it to an abandoned building, finding the League. The other WildC.A.T.s arrive, and after the silver-coated woman suggests they look like trouble, Clark offers a handshake. I don't think you understand. I'm Superman, and this isn't Metropolis, is it? Krypton? Do you know the planet Krypton?
Orbited a red sun, was technologically advanced, exploded about 3 decades ago, made excellent churros.
None of those names ring a bell to Magestros of the Chiron Empire, but he does threaten to remove Supes' head if he does another electromagnetic scan. So Cal punches him into another building. Not often the big blue Boy Scout throws the first punch, but I guess threats of decapitation is one of his triggers in this era. Batman sucker punches Maul, then tells Lantern to deal with him.
Then what was the point of you punching him? I mean, I'm a Batman fan and everything, but did you just want to prove you could take on the biggest guy on the team if you wanted, but just didn't feel like it? What is with the sudden punch happiness of the League today?
Grifter tries to shoot the Bat down, but when his guns are taken away, he decides it's time for a smoke break. He passes it off as realizing there's more to these new costumes than meets the eye, but I think he's just being lazy. Bats even tosses his guns back and he does squat. Flash chases the teleporting Void around, amazed at how she folds in and out of existence, until they stop for a chat. All this in the time it took Batman to ask where the speedster was. That's a nice, subtle display of Wally's speed. Very well done. In his fight with Maul, Green Lantern uses the brute's, back antlers, shoulder blade spikes, for an energy slingshot to smack him in the head and cage him. But Maul can increase and decrease his size, so he escapes easily. After being ordered by Wonder Woman to drop her sword, Zealot boasts about being a Kodo warrior, the best caste of fighter in the galaxy, but is furiously perplexed by Diana's continued persistence. The Amazon calls her a coward and challenges her to face her hand-to-hand. Indignantly, Zealot obliges. Oh, man the lifeboats. Before fighting further, 1D suggests they instead try talking like rational women.
This is before Flashpoint, so rationality had not yet been completely banned by DC.
Green Lantern falls to the ground, his ring not responding as he's succumbed to Maul's spinal pinch, a slow-acting tactic that hits his nervous system like alcohol. Though smarter than his appearance may let on, the bruiser is struck from behind by twin knuckle sandwiches from the Dark Knight and falls.
So, while the one guy that seemed like he'd fight Batman decided to have a personal timeout, Bats got the first and last hit on Maul. I don't know if that's strategy, teamwork, luck, or Bruce being a colossal jackwagon.
Zealot apparently didn't take Diana up on her offer, as the crimson-clad swordswoman is sent flying out of the building. Despite the stubbornness, Wonder Woman promises she isn't going to fall, and again pleads for an open dialogue. One exploded building later, Majestic and Superman have resolved their differences.
So, did the building blow up before you guys called a truce, like one final attack? Or afterwards, and it was just a really celebratory high five?
The two teams confer with each other, specifically how the League aren't bad guys, that Soup's assumed the worst because Majestic is from an alien empire and they've had bad experiences with those. Really, dude? Profiling? And how the JLA have crossed into another time stream. What I find really weird is how Batman puts "the" in front of Grifter's name. I don't know if that was ever a thing, but just sounds weird to me. And I guess it's noteworthy because Grifter's never heard of famous DC comic cities or the Justice League of America. Great name though, guys. It says what it means and it's not afraid to get laughed at.
You rely so heavily on guns in a fight that if they get taken away, you call it quits. Your look is so basic, it can be co-opted by a teenage brat who wouldn't know originality if it had a name tag. And your New 52 series didn't even get to 20 issues, including number 0. Who's the one that should be laughed at here?
Thing is, you may not be the bad guys, but those big with the steam and the attitude are, and they're headed this way. On a splash page, the two groups fight off peculiar-looking cyborg opponents, with the Leaguers much more clearly defined and in focus than the Wildcats. However, Majestic and Void take a time out for a private chat, the former in disbelief about the JLA's insane story, and the latter saying it might actually explain things. Saying time is more of a wave than a stream, she goes on that their universe is experiencing distortions, I believe visualized by this yellow energy discharge, all because of the actions of the Time Lord.
Whoa. Epoch said he was the Lord of Time. I know that seems like semantics, but let's not get him confused with another time traveler with a similar title. We don't need a fanboy war. Even if it would just be sniping comments tossed back and forth before hitting the block button.
Theoretically, they should be able to cross universes just like the distortions, and if they don't, 2 universes will die.
But will they die fighting each other on some mental plane while taking on the forms of crystalline twins that don't want to share a room anymore? Because we already kind of just went through that.
Though the two of them miss the rest of the fight, Majestic says the team will help the League get back to their universe, if the Wildcats will take him back as leader for the remainder of the crisis. So was someone else leader up to now? Because he seemed pretty commanding earlier. Again, probably something from their own books. Anyway, a massive battle didn't keep the two teams from formulating a plan, and then it's off to the Halo building. There, a portal is open to Void Space, a continuum outside space-time that is the source of Void's abilities. She and an overwhelmed GL go into parley with the very entities the woman fused with to become who she is now. Also note how her form is basically a floating head here. We first see some strange polygons that look like multicolored bacteria under an electron microscope, and then targeting circles against different background patterns from Photoshop. Trippy is as Trippy does, I guess. Void translates for the metallic-looking beings, who say the Dark Nova event caused the cracks they are seeing, creating 2 parallel time waves, with the Chrono Cube bringing them back to the Image Comics version of 1997. The entities are willing to offer their own technology, but in exchange for some concepts. The nauseous lantern conjures up a vice grip, a toy monkey, and what looks like a cone fused into a pyramid shape, and that seems to be enough. Some of the creatures even begin taking on different forms after this. They tell me you have a very vivid imagination, one of the best they've seen.
How bored are these entities if they're impressed by a symbol monkey?
The pair returns after Superman sums up what they just learned in about one sentence, and Wally expresses concern for his wife Linda while Epoch is running amok. It'll take an hour for Void to install the appropriate technology into the Chronocube, so they head back to the others. We get this panel of some superpowered people fighting. Maybe this is significant to image readers, but it doesn't really seem to do much for this page or the story, if you ask me, except for reminding us there's a riot going on everywhere. Void says they'll be able to establish a bridge between their worlds for a few hours, but the cats would have to leave before it's gone. It's apparently been an hour because they take another curvy sequence and end up in the side of a building in Metropolis, now overrun with Epoch's unfathomable army of technology.
Maybe if you turn off his Wi-Fi, he won't be able to install new updates. That should end this problem pretty quickly.
A splash page shows what 5 days of world conquest has done to Epoch. Sudden narration explains that he's bonded with an evolving supercomputer called the Omega Attractor, and with it he can summon weapons and tools from throughout time to spread across the globe. Gargoyle troops from the 98th century, 28th century macro suits patrolling the Pacific Rim, and 22nd century clouds that rain mind-softening substances on the populace.
It's kind of weird how many non-DC properties came to mind when I read all that. How advanced tech from hundreds of years in the future was already featured in cartoons before this, or in movies several years after this story. Except for the mind-controlled clouds from the 22nd century. I don't think Sherlock Holmes ever had to deal with anything like that.
A woman and her mother are hiding in an alley, approached by two shadowed, trench-coated figures who don't know what's happened. He took over the TV, what's it? The thing my Billy does? The internet? People's thoughts?
Now there's time travel for you. An era where the internet was so obscure parents would forget what to call it other than something their kids are into.
All the remaining superheroes were rounded up and put on the moon, apparently trapped inside a 10-sided energy dice. Grandma mutters about how people kinda took for granted that there'd always be someone there to save them in times of danger, but the two of them become a tad suspicious when they find one of the evil robots reduced to scrap. And after one of the trenchcoats assures them they'll take care of the menace, they're beset by a strange fog, actually one of Epoch's spies, and so we have the dramatic reveal that one of the guys in shadow is Superman.
It just doesn't have the same feel. Much better.
Alarms are raised, notifying all futuristic weapons and soldiers, calling them to arms, and, well, the narration describes infralaser tracking systems activated by holographic projectors of a 21st century virtual manga emperor. Is Morrison referencing Japanese comics, or does he think manga means something else? Anyway, Epoch is safely within his citadel as he prepares for attack, and we get a poster-worthy 2-page spread of the two teams charging into battle. Looks like Grifter found himself a bike, and Bats had a spare Batmobile just lying around somewhere in Metropolis. Honestly, I wouldn't put it past him. On another 2-pager, Epoch activates anti-JLA codes, just before Superman does some quick scanning with his electric powers about the fences in their way, after charging himself with the electrical potential from the clouds. Powerful energy blasts from him and Majestic takes out the wall, allowing the others inside the fortress. Besieged by an undead army, Batman asks Grifter how good he is. "What? I'm the best there is at what I do, okay? That's what they tell me."
Funny, I don't remember Wolverine ever sitting out a fight because some unarmed dude took away his precious guns. Wuss.
If he's so good, Batman tells him he should fight without guns. It takes him a moment, but Grifter's up for it. Meanwhile, Superman suggests Maul grow as big as he can to take out the electromagnetic broadcast tower. Unfortunately, the bigger he gets, the more mindless he becomes, and he may forget how to revert back if he grows too big. However, Superman can just hit him with electricity to the right neurons, and he should revert no problem, after about 30 seconds. While the warrior women discover their reality's similar trends in animation, Maul has grown in size and starts wrecking the tower. Obviously displeased, Epoch orders an attack, but the green giant, that has nothing to do with vegetables or gamma rays, shrinks in time to narrowly avoid an energy blast. Of course, we didn't see Superman fire the electric blast, as mentioned before. A counter starts at 27, when Epoch is muttering, "He can't do that." But does that mean he was waiting 27 seconds before deciding to counterattack?
For a guy that was previously enamored with how omnipresent he became to the world, he sure took his sweet time reacting to part of his base being demolished by a giant.
Superman instructs Majestic to lead his team against Epoch, since he'll have no data on them, while the League programs the Chrono Cube. Of course, if any of his people are lost in the battle, Majestros wants DC Universe equivalents to return with him as replacements.
Funny, I just reviewed a story where a character had very much the same kind of pragmatism. Of course, it was Two-Face, and he was juggling antidepressants at the time, but I'm sure that doesn't count against Majestic. Maybe it's totally in character for him to expect people from another universe to willingly move to his universe to join his team like they were replacing light bulbs.
Epoch starts gloating about how he expected the League to return, but he's made special preparations, armed and ready to destroy them, only to find his opponents right now are not the JLA. Majestic's opening volley is an eye blast to Epoch's eyes, but he quickly bounces back. He is fused with the Omega Attractor, mentioning twice that he's upgrading his shields. I guess that's the future tech equivalent of clicking OK on a notification window. However, Void teleports within said shield just before it could be upgraded to fourth-dimensional protection, and she shuts it down, leaving him vulnerable to Grifter's firearms and Zealot's sword impaling his torso. The Lord of Time is being repaired, but says the Attractor is going critical from all the data it's absorbed, with a new Big Bang on the way for him to craft existence to his likeness.
Feh. There are characters with much better facial hair than Epoch that would be a better basis for the entire universe getting remade.
That's when the League arrives, having reprogrammed the Chrono Cube to create a circle in time, which will act as a temporal prison cell the villain won't escape from. As he's pulled into the trap, Epoch screams in disbelief that history had recorded he was to be Emperor of this time period. Kyle notes that technically he was, only that his reign was really, really short. They all wait a few seconds, since if they're wrong he could reappear, but he doesn't, so it's all good. The cause of the threatening distortions is resolved, and with the interdimensional bridge in void space decaying, it's time for the Wildcats to go home. As they say their goodbyes, Majestic suggests that Superman, the guy he's technically an homage to, should wear a cape, while Wonder Woman says her world could use more women like Zealot, which makes very little sense given their fight. Also, Batman fails to convince Grifter to fight without guns, but hey, new item for his trophy case.
Did Bats ever mention he has a collection of trophies? Because why else would Grifter make this kind of comment? They did this earlier when the gunman was talking about how good he was, and Batman would have been his sidekick if they had shared the same world. But when did Batman offer this kind of information to someone he had no reason to offer this kind of information? I know they're going for some tongue-in-cheek references for humor's sake, but the fact that they have no basis just makes it feel very forced and unnatural.
So the comic ends with the two teams back in their proper universes, each with important work ahead of them, while Epoch, in the unware, plummets backwards in time. As he approaches critical mass, living data sculptures around him begin to speak. They tell him not to be afraid. It will be like coming home. He is matter becoming energy. One final scrap of data, one last shred of input, is all it takes to trigger the blast, the dark nova. One last thought. So they remind him that this is the greatest moment of his life. And of course, it is.
And that was JLA Wildcats. Overall, I'd say it was an okay read.
Green Lantern had a line shortly after the Dark Nova hit that I personally find stupid. Epoch, for all his tech and ambition, makes some rookie mistakes, and Superman seemed quick to jump to the offensive, but otherwise I can't say I heavily disliked this book. The art was consistently appealing, it didn't feel overly padded, and the story was a good way of having these two teams meet up. I had no idea who Marcus was, and a little research revealed he was a character known as Alpha Centurion, a soldier that had been abducted by aliens in the 2nd century and didn't get back to Earth for another 2,000 years. And now that I think about it, did Teen Wally never mention to anyone that he encountered an armored time-traveling villain or Superman Blue Electric Boogaloo?
It's not like anyone on the League warned him not to tell anyone. So what was stopping him from mentioning it to his Uncle Barry or his comrades in the Teen Titans? Was his older self's kissing metaphor supposed to be deterrent enough?
My familiarity with the Wildcats is more or less exclusive to the mid-90s animated series, and that had several deviations from their comic counterparts. And given how Epoch was disposed of, they seemed more like a painful distraction than anything else, but it still made sense that they'd present the biggest variable against his plans. Despite that, I think this book still did a good job of getting these characters across, even if I didn't get to like them or would question their motives. Like Majestros demanding replacement heroes. Sure, it's kinda creepy, but if someone fell in battle, who would he pick? I mean, Elastigirl has powers like Maul, but I don't think she becomes more savage as she grows. Wonder Woman is the obvious replacement for Zealot, and Misfit can teleport like Void, possibly better. I know she wouldn't be created for several years after this, but work with me here, people.
But who could replace a snarky, morally dubious, gun-dependent egomaniac like Grifter? Well, they both qualify, and this one serves no purpose, so feel free to take them both off DC's hands. Preferably retroactively, so Cassie Kane can have her old life and good origin back.
The character interactions seemed to work, though Batman attacking Maul but leaving most of the work to Green Lantern seemed rather peculiar. He had the least amount of work to do other than Flash, who just had to run around after a woman in a chrome bodysuit. And it seemed like such a 180 that Diana thought Zealot served as a good example, since in their fight the Amazon chided her for being too stubborn to talk things out. And given Grifter's remark, it seems the Coda warrior is prone to violent outbursts. I did enjoy how Morrison succinctly described the wild future tech the villain deploys, not using so much exposition, but just enough that you can tell what he's getting at. Probably the best moment was on the last page, revealing Epoch as the very dark Nova that empowered his earlier self. I found that very clever.
That said, this crossover didn't feel overly epic, nor shamefully terrible. It's kind of like a good enough episode of a TV show you enjoy. It doesn't evoke a whole lot of emotion in you, not like some other ones might have, but it's certainly not making you change the channels either. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.